that sock actually materialized out of nowhere. It's not that you're missing a sock. You just
get an extra sock?
You got a new sock.
So you're telling me that the washing machines and dryers have a way to clone our clothing?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's what you were...
That's the science behind that.
That's the science.
I'm sticking to it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Millenniotic, the podcast where a couple millennials talk about society, entertainment, and the logistics of life. I am AJ.
I'm Jason, and this is our 11th episode of the podcast. If you want to keep up to dates, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find all of our podcast episodes. You can also see clips, like little shortened, condensed little clips that help you so too long didn't watch crowd. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, some of the best of what we say.
Mm-hmm. And
whether they're smart or stupid.
Yep. And we are a podcast, so you can find us wherever podcasts can be found: Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all that good jazz. You can also follow us on all of our social media pages: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Post there a lot, so there's plenty of content to see if you ever get bored. Don't worry about that.
Yep.
So this week, we teased pet peeves, right?
Yes, we did.
So we're going to go into a little bit different direction than what we kind of teased originally, which was kind of the millennial versus boomer and the pet peeves that they often get associated with. I couldn't find anything that like compared generational pet peeves. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our best educated guesses on our on our top pet peeves, right?
On our top pet peeves versus.
We're also going to talk about one pet peeve that I know only exists in the baby boomers, and that is a popular phrase that came about late last year called "Okay, boomer."
Okay,
right?
boomer.
So we're going to go into kind of what happened there and how it's more than just a comeback or just because we're lazy and we want to push people aside. We're going to talk about why we say that and what it means to us and then how it's perceived.
Exactly.
We're also going to talk about, and I want to talk about this first, the science of why a pet peeve makes you angry, right? I want to talk about why people get angry.
Yeah, because they're not just irrational. They're not
It's not. It's actually chemically induced.
Yes, a little bit.
It has to do with brain matter and stuff like that, right? So I'm going to turn it over to the science expert now.
I'm not even a science expert. I have a degree in biology, but that's just about it.
So why do we get mad? Why do we get mad at things? Like, I don't get it. We just don't be mad, lol, right?
Yeah,
like that.
right.
I don't know.
I'm going to break this down like a little bit, like just for like simple terms and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I listened to a really good podcast on NPR, and they had a science correspondent on there named Joel Palca. And they kind of broke down pet peeves as like, they're the 3 U's of pet peeves, and you will like relate to this immediately. So basically, the first one, they're unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
They're unpleasant. They're unpredictable.
Yeah.
And they are uncertain in their duration. So basically, say you're like on an airplane and there's a baby screaming. What are the 3 U's about that? It's unpleasant.
Yep.
It's terrible to hear. You hate that. It's unpredictable.
Because
you don't know when that baby's going to start screaming.
You're right.
Nope. And it's uncertain in its duration. You never know when it's going to stop.
Exactly.
Your brain doesn't enjoy that. It's just like, it's awful. And so basically most science like breaks it down into noise. Like on any research that they've done before, like scientists did, like they hooked people up to like machines and stuff like that to monitor brain activity. And what they noticed when any like unpleasant noise, say nails scratching on a chalkboard or anything like that, they noticed huge activity in the amygdala, which I'm pointing at the back of my brain when actually it's really like kind of dead center in like the lower. It's in the medial temporal lobe, which medial meaning medium. Temporal lobe is just like an area in your brain. It's like a little lower in the middle. So this is kind of like your center for decision making. It's your center for emotional response.
Yep.
So that's the big one. So your brain has neurons, which are like a little tiny cell that is an axon and a synapse. And these connect by their axons, which are like their heads and their synapses. And what happens is when something unpleasant happens, when a new experience happens, just anything, your brain forms patterns and they connect. And when they connect, they release their neurotransmitters, which in turn triggers your other organs to release hormones, kind of like adrenaline. Yeah. Like that study kind of, like a lot of people don't 100% know why that noise, nails on a chalkboard, really triggers us. They say either it's because of like the high-pitched frequency is very unsettling to us. A lot of people also think that it's because it resembles a human scream. So they think it kind of triggers our fight or flight instinct, which those neurotransmitters, once your fight or flight gets activated, they're releasing adrenaline, which is getting you really agitated and just like ready to punch something.
When I hear nails on a chalkboard, I'm ready to throw down.
Yeah.
I'm ready to throw cuffs.
Yeah, you feel that tingling. You feel that tingling in your spine. That's your body just like activating and just ready to go. You
Exactly.
hate it.
It's not really like in our control to an extent. Obviously, you can control your emotions if you think about it. But for the most part, when it's reactive, like a fight or flight kind of thing, it's just the way you react is the way you're wired.
Yeah, you can't control it.
Really, right. So with that being said, now we know why we get mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's pretty much your brain processes it and you get mad because adrenaline and neurotransmitters and stuff, right?
So when you're trying to like fix your tire in your car and your wife is wondering why you're getting all pissed off, it's just like you can't really say, I don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. When they say, I don't know, it's because they really don't know.
You really don't know.
Your mind's telling you to be mad.
Yep, exactly.
So with that being said, let's go into some of our top pet peeves and kind of guess on what generation, not just boomers or millennials, because there's obviously Gen Z and Gen X, right? Which kind of we throw to the side because we can't relate to them as much because they're too close to us. And they weren't really our parents. I'm going to start with my top 5 pet peeves.
Shoot it up.
All right, so number 1, slow drivers.
Yep.
Now, who do you think gets annoyed by slow drivers the most?
Probably millennials. Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. Oh,
Me.
You specifically?
I do.
Okay.
I cannot stand slow drivers. There's a speed limit. Go at least the speed limit. If you're going under the speed limit, I should be able to pit move you off the road. I'm just kidding. That's way too much. But you understand my point is road rage comes into effect very often in a lot of situations, and that's why manufacturers give you horns so you can let out your frustration, right? So
You can say that, but you can get pulled over by honking your horn, actually.
you could get pulled over by tailgating.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I haven't seen that either.
No.
But I think this is more of a millennial
Yeah, exactly.
and probably like a Gen X pet peeve towards usually the slower drivers, and I'm going to generalize a lot, right, is the older generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they go as fast as they feel safe to go, which I feel much safer going a faster speed.
Yeah.
So that it's the fact that it's unpredictable. I don't know when it's going to happen, like you mentioned earlier. That's why it annoys me the most.
Well, it's like we've talked about this like as like a big difference between millennials and baby boomers in the fact that like we're always like we gotta go, we gotta get going, we gotta do something with our time,
Right.
And it's like we have like that feeling of constant anxiety and constant like we have to be at this place at this specific time. Where like boomers, they're much more like they have time, they don't care so much about getting to their destination, more so care about getting there safe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for them it's a matter like they obviously care about punctuality.
Yeah.
Right? And that's my second pet peeve I'm going to mention is lateness. That's a common one that I find. I think boomers are very much
Yes.
it's much more of a boomer pet peeve than it is a millennial pet peeve. I am a very punctual person. I pride myself on being on time to anything that being on time actually matters.
Oh, I get there 15 minutes early
Right?
every time.
I'm very punctual. We are both very punctual.
Yeah, I can't help but always want to be at work like early.
For me, it's just like deadlines and that kind of thing. I want to make sure that when somebody tells me something needs to be done by a certain day, I get it done. And it's not just because I'm being instructed to do it. It's because it's the right thing to do. Right.
Exactly.
So in my mind, it's just one of those things that it's natural for me because it's really just the right thing and it's programmed into my head.
Yeah, time management is huge. If you don't get something done on time, then all it's going to do is just pile up and get worse.
Right, because we all have that one friend who is just chronically late for everything. And you just assume they're going to be late and you have a general idea of what time they're going to be. They say 8, they'll be like 9, right?
Yep.
Everybody knows one of those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one is grammar correctors. So this is more of an online one, I would say. And I would say this one is more, I think more millennials get pissed off about this one than boomers.
Yeah, they do.
Mainly because it is more of an online thing. Yeah. And I think millennials use it more as a comeback because they're lazy and don't want to come up with something. So if someone burns them online, they go, your, right?
It's like how my
your star, right?
It's like how my favorite expression is, well, actually.
Yeah. Let me push up
as
my glasses.
I push up my glasses
exactly.
real quick.
So with that being an online one, right? I'm going to go to another kind of online one, which I'm going to say is an honorable mention. And there's two different ones that really just tick me off online. One is clickbait, headlines, and the other one is speech to text. I cannot stand when I get an email from a client who did speech to text and it makes zero sense. I have no idea what they're talking about. I cannot stand that. And I have to respond and be like, what do you mean? And then they have to go back. And I know it's a waste of everybody's time, right? Because that's what it is, in my opinion, is you're trying to speed things up. But for some reason, we don't have the technology to perfectly record our voices and turn it into text yet. I don't understand why.
Well, because it's technology that's understanding your like, it's taking your voice and turning it, like, the syllables into words. It can understand syllables. It can't understand your punctuality. It can't insert a comma.
Here's the thing. It can and it should, because when I got my new phone, when you set up the quote-unquote OK Google or Siri thing, what it does is it asks you to...
Which you just triggered your OK Google.
Oh my God, that's so annoying. So when you first get a new phone, for the most part, you have to train your phone into kind of like the speed of which you talk, how your tone is, you know, all of these kind of things so that your phone understands you better. And for me, it still doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's what annoys me
Yeah.
about technology nowadays, is the fact that it's not perfect. Get it right, people.
Yeah, I know.
Get it right.
Yeah, because I find it funny because you bring up, like, grammar police before this, and it's like, I'm not really, like, a big person on, like, correcting other people's grammar, but it's like, because so long as it makes sense, you know?
Yeah, when I'm online and I type your without an RE apostrophe, I usually do it on purpose to trigger people.
Yeah.
Because I know there's grammar Nazis out there that
absolutely.
just get riled up, and I love it. Puts a smile on my face. So the other one I have, which I really hate too, and I think everybody kind of hates, when you're folding your laundry and you have an extra sock, a single sock, right?
Yep.
That's what pisses me off. Where did the sock go?
Or
I
did
put an
this-
even number into the washing machine and then into the dryer, and one disappears. Where do they go, man?
No, that
Where
sock
do they
actually,
go?
That sock actually materialized out of nowhere. It's not that you're missing a sock. You just
You
got
just
a
get
new
an
sock.
extra sock?
You got a new sock.
So you're telling me that the washing machines and dryers have a way to clone our clothing?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's what you were...
That's the science behind that.
That's the science.
I'm sticking to it.
And the last one I have has to do kind of with more traffic. And it's pedestrians stopping in the middle of, you know, street traffic, we'll just say. So you're following somebody and then they just stop and say they look at their phone and you have to stop suddenly. I just want to run those people over.
I know.
Is it okay that I just give them like a nice little forearm shiver into the back, or is that like
little bit.
unacceptable?
It's a little unacceptable.
It's a little
in today's
rude?
Society, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't do it though. Step off to the side, please.
The thing is, like, you're a pedestrian. When I'm like walking out in public, when I'm like in the mall, I kind of think of like me as a driver. When I'm like walking, you know, walk on the right side. Freaking, if you want to pass somebody, you could pass them on the left. It's not hard.
Stay right, people.
Stay right.
Stay right.
Like, you're programmed with these things because you're a driver. Like, just do it. You know, if you're on an escalator, stand to the right if people want to walk on by
that was what
you.
I found a lot, was people saying standing on the left of an escalator was a pet
Oh my
peeve.
God, I know it is. It's an absolute real pet peeve.
I stand on the right because I'm going to let the escalator do the work for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's acceptable as an American to not do anything.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But it's like those people who are in a rush, or they're not walking at the same speed as you. They want to pass you on the left.
Let them. You know, everybody has their own pace.
Yeah, exactly.
Just that for me is more of just people being ignorant of their surroundings. And I can't stand people who don't understand what is actually happening around them because they're just so either caught up or just like ignorant.
Yeah, it's like 5 years ago when Pokemon Go was a huge thing.
Oh my God.
Friggin' people literally standing in the middle of intersections because they found a Pokemon and they have to be standing exactly there to catch it.
I've seen so many almost accidents because of that when I lived in San Diego. People crossing the crosswalk and then like taking a few steps into an intersection to try to grab someone.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Don't
like,
do that.
bro.
You're going to get hit.
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is the Squirtle worth a broken leg?
If it's a squirrel, it totally is, but...
I don't think so. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So those were pretty much the pet peeves that I found that were probably some of the most popular. Do you have a list?
I have a list. I have
Okay.
a list of like some most popular, and I have my own personal list.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start with one that is just because everybody like so far, I am an optimist, and one thing that I really cannot stand is just excessive pessimism. Like those people who are just like either whining or complaining with like no real solution.
Yeah.
Where it's just like you're just like complaining and complaining and complaining, but you're not coming up with something to make it better. You know what I'm saying? We all know those Debbie Downers. Like they exist, and it's just like, man, come on. Just want to shake them. Like stop
It's
it.
one thing to have like a reasonable complaint about something. It's
Yeah,
another
exactly.
thing to complain just about everything and then not do anything about it, right? And that's, I would agree, that annoys me too.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not so much of a pet peeve so much as it's just like my own personal like thing, I suppose. But there's going to be a serious trend with pet peeves because mine's a driving one, and that is undeserved traffic. Where it's just
Undeserved
like
traffic.
you're driving, all of a sudden there's traffic stop, and it's not even rush hour, and you're just like, what the hell is going on right now? And you know it's because there are people who just won't stay inside their lane and are just cutting people off. Because it's like, that's just another pet peeve, getting cut off. It sucks, it's awful, and it's like, why are you doing this? Because literally, you're going a couple extra inches to get stopped again, and you're making me hit that foot brake, and it causes a domino effect that just reverberates all across the highway because everybody's just getting to that point where they have to hit that little stop. And most of the time with that undeserved traffic, it's probably because there was an accident that happened and people didn't merge like promptly in time, which causes more people to stop.
And they're too busy looking at the
Rubbernecking.
accident instead of driving
Yep.
on the stupid highway like
know.
you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I
Don't
was-
slow down because somebody else got inconvenienced by somebody. Stop it.
I know.
Just keep driving.
Just because you want to laugh at those people being inconvenienced when you're actually inconveniencing the people behind you. How
Actually
dare
the
you.
worst. Actually the worst.
Actually
That's
the
a good
worst.
one. I agree with that one.
So another one that I'm not really like. So I feel like this one is a bit of a boomer one, and that's being interrupted during a conversation.
I am a professional conversation interrupter, by
Yeah,
the
me
way.
too. Same.
I am really bad at, I have a thought in my head, let me just say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise I will forget it.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of my mindset. Mm-hmm. And I know it pisses people off.
Exactly. I know it does.
I know it does.
Yep.
But I can't help it.
I know.
really can't.
I know, which is why it doesn't bug me that much when like people interrupt me because like that's my normal flow
Right.
of conversation.
Exactly.
Where it's just like one person, like I don't really see it as talking over the other person as long as you're adding to the conversation. You know
It's
what I'm
one
saying?
thing to add to a conversation, another thing to completely change the conversation or go back to something that was irrelevant.
Where it's
right?
like you talk to somebody like my father, who it's just like you interrupt them, and then it's just like he just gets so pissed because he's
And
like,
he's done.
I lost my train of thought. I'm done. I'm not
Right.
talking anymore. I'm like, come on, dude. Which is why I mean, where it's like I feel like it's a bit more of like a generational thing because there was like a paper that I read on like people interrupting each other, and they kind of break it down in like genders where it's like women. If like women were to interrupt somebody, it's seen as like you almost like look down on them. You almost like see them as like less intelligent because like you see them as like irrational, but it's like no, that's not even the case. They have a point and they want to make it. Where it's like men, when you're talking or when you interrupt somebody, they see it as like active aggression. Like you're talking over me, you're like doing this, and I'm like, yeah, but I feel like that's an old school way of thinking, which is why I feel like it's a bit more of a boomer pet peeve, is because it's kind of like an old world way of thinking in the difference between genders. So that's why I had that on my list, where it's not really my pet peeve, but
right.
it definitely can be some. Another one is chewing with your mouth open.
That's probably one of the most popular
Which I
ones.
really can't stand.
I didn't add that because I don't really... It's not that I don't care. It's just I'm not usually looking at people while they're eating. I'm usually focused on my own thing. And usually for the most part, it's for me to not make a mess of myself, right? I'm trying to not make a mess for myself as well as being polite when I'm eating in public.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not usually looking around for people who are rude. I know there's some people who like to people watch. I'm not one of those people.
Oh, I'm one of those people.
I hate, like, I couldn't give a crap about what somebody else is doing, dude. I need to figure out what I'm doing, right? And some people can just do nothing by watching other people, and that's fine. Just don't watch me, please. Very self-conscious.
Now, my last one is really just an irrational one. I just kind of put this one in there just to kind of be a little entertaining, and I don't know if there's anyone else out there.
Let me hear it.
I will say, this is a disclaimer. This is a obsessive-compulsive tendency. This is not OCD or anything like that. People who say, oh, I have, like, this is my OCD. I'm like, you do not have a disorder. This is a tendency.
Yeah.
It is obsessive, but it's not, you don't have OCD.
Because
OCD is a serious problem.
And especially for one that I know what you're going to talk, especially for this one in particular.
Yes. Odd numbers on volume control.
So like 13, right?
Yes.
I know that annoys people.
Yes, it does.
And for me, it's not even like the fact that it's an odd number. It's the fact that it's not a clean number.
Yes.
It's not like 15, 20, 10. You know, those are clean numbers that people often just gravitate towards. You put it on 21, you can tell what kind of crowd you have in your room.
Yeah, exactly.
You just put it to 21 and look around.
Yep.
You'll see what kind of crowd you're with.
And you'll see me fucking eyeballing you and ready to grab that remote and change it.
You'll see a real life Arthur meme, right?
Yes, exactly. with the fist just ready to go. And I mean, this can like easily be explained by like pet peeves and stuff like that, or just like your brain in general, where like your brain is looking for patterns. Like, our brains are always looking for patterns, and pet peeves are breaking of the norm. It's that,
exactly.
It's that level of uncertainty and change that you don't enjoy. That same thing with traffic. Like, you're driving along, and all of a sudden it comes to a stop, and you're just getting pissed off, and it's because it's a breaking of the norm. It's breaking of, like, your expectations of what you were going to do with your day.
I think that's the biggest thing is the expectation of what is quote unquote normal for you, right? So like you said, if it does interrupt your normal flow, you're going to start questioning why it's happening. And usually the first thing you're going to do is just get mad.
Yeah,
and that's just the way your mind's going to react because everything is not going according to plan in your head, right? So I would agree with that as well. So I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest pet peeves that I think for boomers that came out recently in the last, I don't know, half year or so from when we're recording this episode is the phrase, okay, boomer, right? This is one that is blown up to an extreme amount of unnecessary exposure in my mind.
Yeah.
I found a Vox article. I don't know if you guys know what Vox is.
Yeah.
Useless blogging website.
It really is, yeah.
But I read this article. I got some points from it. And I agree with some of it, and I don't agree with other parts of it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that article was filled with GIFs, little animations for each topic.
TikToks, actually. TikToks.
Okay, cool.
TikToks. Cool. So you can tell what kind of website it is just by that. It gained traction at the end of last year, really. But it can be traced back as far as 2005 on a website called 4chan, which seems to be the birthplace of memes.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it can.
So it came back starting in 2015, sorry, not 2005, 2015, which I guess makes sense because that's when generations started to actually be recognized and split into certain groups. They say it's meant to be cutting and dismissive. And in my mind, when you say, okay, boomer, it's the same thing as saying F you, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because what it is one of those phrases that doesn't necessarily have a comeback to it or like a response because it's just so dismissive.
It is, yeah.
It's so dumb. Like if somebody says F you, you're like, all right, this person's irrational,
exactly,
right? So that's probably what boomers think when millennials go, okay, boomer. The biggest thing with that point is it is not productive to say, okay, boomer, right? Because if you have a problem with something, usually expressing your opinion and whether it comes back good or bad is better than just saying, just trolling by saying, okay, boomer.
Yeah, it's basically like losers say what?
Exactly.
I can understand the mentality of it, because the thing is like for so long, because you can trace this meme back even like further, or not like the actual phrase or anything like that, but you can trace back like the frustrations with it. Because
Right.
I remember in like, I think it was like 2010 or something like that, there was like a newswoman or something like that who did like a blog post from like her car, and it was just complaining about the millennial generation from like the perspective of like a really rich woman. And it's just like, she's like, calls us lazy, calls us all these things, and it's just like in your mind you're just like, okay, boomer, I guess. But like it's very dismissive, but it's millennials' way of just like calling out all these boomers doing nothing but shit talking about millennials. And it kind of paved the way, in a manner of speaking, for millennials to kind of defend themselves, I guess, but in a very passive-aggressive way.
So they said in this article that it's the Gen Z and millennial way to really express their frustration
Yep.
with the lack of what they think is power in our generation, right? Because I think that's the biggest thing that us millennials feel. Is that we don't actually have a say in anything, and like what we say doesn't actually matter, even if it's like the right idea, because the way to get it done has to be done through boomers, because they own the positions of power right now.
It's true.
So in my opinion, that's why a lot of young people don't vote,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they
It's
don't
true.
understand that yes, your vote matters, but they also think, why should I care? My vote doesn't even matter. I'm in a blue state. I'm in a red state.
Yeah.
You know, like if I vote the opposite way, is it actually going to matter?
Yeah,
The
it's-
answer is yes.
Yeah. It's kind of just like, the thing is just like the label of millennial. It comes with a lot of disrespect. And that's a huge pet peeve for a lot of people, is just being generally
Labeled.
disrespected.
Yeah.
Labeled, disrespected, any of those things. Because it's just like, you think about it, it's like most boomers, when they complain about millennial issues and stuff like that, it's just, you're looking at a younger generation with nothing but like disrespect, and nobody enjoys that. Nobody wants to be talked down to.
Yeah. We don't want to feel helpless, right?
I hate being called chief.
Chief. All right, Chief.
All right,
I know
Chief.
something about when I worked at Dunkin' Donuts, dude,
Yeah.
and people called me Chief. I just wanted to throw the coffee in their face. you know,
exactly
like,
right.
Don't call me Chief, buddy.
Call me chief. No,
I'm
don't
not your guy friend.
No.
You know, like that whole thing.
like, that's what I mean.
But that's I also you do that to meme people.
Yeah,
They say
it's true.
thanks, Chief.
Thanks,
No
Chief."
problem, Honcho, or
Yeah.
just something stupid like that, right?
It's like your captain, any of like those things
Oh
where
my
it's just
God,
like,
Captain. If I got called Captain, I'm turning and walking away because I don't even know what to respond
yeah,
to
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
So in this article, they mentioned how okay boomer is a comparative way to saying the N-word.
No.
Absolutely not. And that's one point I don't agree with in this, is that they think boomers think that when we say okay boomer, it's as bad as saying
It's like a
the
slur.
N-word.
They're saying it's a slur.
Right, and it's really not supposed to be that extreme. I feel like that's always the biggest thing when it comes to this kind of phrasing, and anything when it comes cross-generational is just how extreme we take things.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And that's what annoys me the most about society, really, is the fact that we always look at the extreme, most of the time in the negative variety. We're not looking for, you know, oh man, look at all these boomers who have self-made, that, you know, they were the first to raise kids as a double working parents, you know, all that kind of stuff. We're looking at them as they're oppressing us. We're not able to move up in the workplace because they're holding us back, because the positions we want, they have. And until they go away, we don't feel like we can do anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's not the right mindset, and it's extreme.
Yeah.
Because you have to make your own path.
Yeah. And the issue is you're encouraging those people on 4chan. You're encouraging those people by having these extreme reactions
Yeah.
to all of these things, to encourage those people to keep poking that bear, to look for things to be able to push people's buttons because they live off of that. They feed off of those extreme reactions that they can get off of people.
And the extreme reactions turn into memes.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much.
So, like, the whole World War III meme that's been going around, not okay with that, by the way. Not okay with it. Because who knows what one little white kid in Ohio says that's going to bug some dude in Iran.
The fact that you were even mentioning that this could turn into World War III is putting that idea out into the world.
It's too extreme.
Congratulations.
Way too extreme.
You've done this.
It was a story on November 4th of 2019. There was this 25-year-old member of the New Zealand Parliament. Her name was Chloe Swarbrick. Swarbrick? Hopefully I didn't mispronounce her name.
Sorry, Chloe.
Sorry, Chloe. But she used it in Parliament as she got heckled by somebody in the crowd while she was making a speech. Her instant reaction was, "Okay, boomer."
Yeah.
She said that, and she got a lot of backlash from that because it was pretty much they thought that she was just saying "F you," whoever was in the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
But in essence, her entire speech was about the fact that the climate change and economic climate that they're in isn't being resolved by the people who are already in charge.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
what she's trying to do is bring to light all of these subjects like climate change, which is a huge thing. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the Australia fires.
Yeah.
If there's maps that overlay Australia with America, a quarter of America would be on fire
right now. Yeah.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I know.
And we don't understand that because it's so hot, they're not getting any rain to put out the fires naturally, so it just keeps spreading.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why there's a lot more forest fires and, like, the wildfires in California. Like, all of these things have been getting more and more extreme. The storms are getting more and more extremes, right?
Yeah.
So obviously there's scientific proof to back it up, and our generation is trying to take the first step in what is probably too late into figuring out ways to fix the climate problem that we're going to be running into.
Yeah.
Because I think I saw something about in the year 2100 that Massachusetts will have the same climate as Florida.
Yeah, everything.
Like something like that?
Climates are shifting north. Yes.
Like, that's nuts.
Yeah. I learned that I think it was like 6 years ago in like my ecology class. They were talking about that, and it's insane. When it comes to the Iran thing and climate change, it's just America's already involved in all these wars, and all it's doing is just bringing light all of this. And I'm like, all I see is the fact that we're just fighting over oil. We are fighting over gasoline, and we're not doing anything to create a sustainable energy source.
I was thinking about this so much the other day. I don't know why, dude.
Yeah.
But I was like, why aren't we just powered by the sun and the wind and the water? Like, why aren't we powered by all of these things that are so accessible to us for so many years? And yet what we're doing is we're just destroying the earth.
Because supply and demand, my friend.
Because it's just easier to go with the infrastructure we have in place than to create new ones.
How can you jack up the prices of something that is within unlimited supply? So why would you have an unlimited power source like the sun, like electric power or anything like that, when we have oil, which is a limited supply, and we're running
and we
out
just
of?
gouge people with.
And we could just gouge them for it.
Right,
Yes.
and we're also gouging the earth of their natural supplements that it needs to survive.
Exactly. I remember seeing a chart that was talking about like the sustainable population of humanity, and it's about 4 billion.
Yeah, we're way too much, by the way.
We have way surpassed that because of the help of fossil fuels and because of everything like that. Because we can transport our food from different locations. We can use our trucks that use an immense amount of fossil fuels to bring all these things. We can speed up food production to be able to feed us. But the thing is what happens when all that fossil fuel goes away? We're going to drop down to 4 billion where sustainability can be reached.
And hopefully by then it's not too late to already have all of these renewable sources of energy that are just so available to us, and we're not implementing them. I mentioned this in an earlier episode. There's more electric cars on the road now than there are manual cars.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
thought
that's
that was
true. Yeah.
interesting because that's the correct direction to go. And there's companies coming up with hydrogen cars that are powered on hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very clean way to replace what fossil fuel do.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's much easier to create, and
Yep.
it's not nearly as bad for the environment.
Yep.
So that's one way car manufacturers have been looking into replacing the good old petrol engines,
Yep.
right? That's pretty much what she was going into about the speech, and then she got heckled in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny that they brought it up in this article, because I did hear about this too, and I wanted to bring it up because it really is just like it was a reactionary thing
Yeah.
that got blown out of proportion,
And now her whole speech is forgotten because
Right.
of one little thing.
and like the entire point is missed.
Yeah.
And because one rude dude decided that they wanted to speak up. I said this in the last episode. Keep your mouth shut sometimes.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Sometimes just listen and then form your own opinion afterwards. You don't always have to say something. Like hecklers at any kind of show, I just want to strangle them. Like, shut up. You're here. You paid money to watch a certain thing. Don't ruin it for
Don't ruin
everybody.
it for everybody just
Why
'cause
are you
think
doing
you're
that?
funnier
If
than
you-
anybody else.
It's either that or you're just like, you're so unhappy with it, you feel like everybody else is unhappy. Like,
Yeah.
if you're unhappy with something, remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it is clicking the X at the top right corner of your computer, right? Or getting up and walking out of the venue you're at.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need to speak up and say things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
A political speech where she's trying to say the older generation isn't doing enough in these aspects of the entire country's well-being and interrupting that,
Yeah.
that's rude as hell.
All you're doing is devaluing
What are you doing?
what she's saying.
Stop it. Another thing, and this goes back to how boomers take okay boomer as. You know, we talked about the extreme, how they think it's like the N-word, right? And it's because they think it has to do with ageism and entitlement,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny because they also mention that it's a passive admission to who is really in charge, right? Because in essence, we know, and most people know, where the power really lies. And it's not the millennials.
No, it's not.
So by us doing this, really just enforces the fact that we feel helpless.
Yeah.
And that we really don't have any say or power into anything that we do online, we do, politically.
And the fact of the matter is it's just it feels good to be able to do that, or it feels good to like these millennials who want to just get some form of reaction out of boomers. Like, that's the thing. It feeds everybody. It's just what it does. And the fact that we can actually irk them in such a way that we've never been able to do before is what kind of fuels this meme and fuels this expression.
It's really true
Yeah.
because in essence, it's just our generation being frustrated.
Yeah, it is.
because we aren't having the impact that we want to have.
No.
Right? And that's really what it's about. They say, okay, boomer is about economic anxiety, the threat of environmental collapse, and people resisting change. I agree.
Yeah.
I actually 100%
exactly.
agree with that. That's how I would use okay, boomer, is pretty much the fact that you're not listening. You're not understanding my point of view.
Yeah.
So you can F off because you're not obviously going to change. So that's where the okay boomer, in my opinion, is, right.
Yeah.
Even though it's really not right.
Yeah.
I understand using it in that kind of way.
Exactly. The thing is this has existed in numerous times where it's like what the higher power has to develop a a victim complex.
Yeah.
In order to protect themselves. In order to keep their power, they have to turn themselves into the victim in order to gain sympathy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And this goes way back into when Vietnam was a thing. You
Yeah.
remember that with
Yes, I
all
do.
of the riots on the colleges because they didn't want to go to war and all this kind of stuff. Like, that was an extreme protest that happened a lot of places. And it was really the same kind of thing where it was our parents at that time were not agreeing with what their older generation was doing.
Yep.
And they felt helpless. So this is how they did it. And without the internet, they had to mass up. Everybody had to get together
Yeah, exactly.
and get their voices heard one way or another.
Yep.
So it's interesting how it kind of, boomers did it before us, obviously, but now they're not listening to us.
No, yeah.
They were the first to want change for the better. They wanted to get rid of racism and segregation, right? So they did that. And now we want to have certain things a priority, and they're not listening because they're still stuck in their ways, and they're not trying to change. So I understand that. And the last thing I want to bring up, and they brought it up in the article, and I was well aware of it when it happened, was do you know the website Deadspin? Have you heard of Deadspin?
No.
It's an online website, keyword was, an online website that pretty much was just finding like the wonky thing in sports as well as writing things for sports, right? So they were just like an online blogging website mainly about sports.
Yes.
So last year, one of the editors was fired because she wrote an article, or he wrote an article. I can't remember if it was a he or she.
Okay.
They wrote an article, and the editors above them, which were a different generation, said, stick to sports. And they got fired for not sticking to sports. You know what this caused? A mass resign of all editors of Deadspin. There were like 20 people who just resigned instantly.
Yeah.
And because of that, they went under. Deadspin no longer exists.
That's amazing, actually. I love that.
They said they weren't able to write what they wanted to write about because the mandated bosses were out of touch. They were out of touch. And because of that, they're like, you know what? I don't need this. So everybody decided to rise up. And now Deadspin's dead. Crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. That's really cool.
That Twitter account had like 1.5 million followers, by the way. It was a big blogging website that a lot of people knew about and had some controversy to go with it. And now it's just dead because the older generation that was part of it wouldn't allow things to go because of a certain mandate. Like, it's so dumb. This is so dumb. Why is this stuff happening? And that perfectly goes into the point I made earlier, which is why aren't people listening?
Yeah.
Why don't they want to change? Like, it's one thing to have an opinion and call it an opinion and write an opinion piece, and saying, like, Deadspin doesn't necessarily agree with everything. And it's another thing to just completely cut them out and just say, stick to sports and leave. Yeah. Because LeBron last year, at one point, there was like a post online or something at LeBron where it's like, they said, like, shut up and dribble or something like that to him. He went off. Yeah. He's like, no. Yeah. We use our platform as professional sports to raise issues that the little people don't have the power to do. They don't have the exposure to do, which is the right thing to do if you're a professional athlete in the spotlight. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can raise awareness for great charities. Yes. You can raise awareness for all of these, causes.
You have a platform, use it.
Exactly. Use it the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
And athletes like LeBron, as much as I don't like LeBron as a player, as a person, he does everything the right way.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
He does. Yeah. So using your power in that kind of way is what you want from somebody who has a platform to stand on. You don't want to be held down and, like, spoken to like that online. Yeah. Like, nobody wants to be spoken down to. Yep. And, like, people have the audacity to think that they're safe online by doing it and they're not going to get called out for it. No. Like, people will find out who you are, whether you're on a burner account or not, dude.
You're as unsafe as those people who you're talking shit to.
Really are. So that was an interesting article I found by Vox about how OK Boomer was taken by society in general. So I wanted to really talk about that because OK Boomer is a pretty popular thing nowadays. Yeah. And it kind of fits perfectly into our pet peeves topic. It's true. Because it is one of the biggest pet peeves. And in reality, I think it all comes back to the wealth gap. I really do.
It does. Yeah.
It comes back to the fact that we don't have the money, so we don't really have the power. We make less than they did coming out of college, in essence, right? Because of inflation, because of all the debt we're in. Yep.
And you can easily say that we have less power than they ever did.
Ever.
At our age.
Which is nuts because, like, the way the internet's supposed to be is it's supposed to, like, have everybody connected so that everybody can come up with a solution for everything. Yep. And one thing I think that is going to be very important in the elections to come is finding ways to unite the government. whether it's making it, you know, all one, I wouldn't say like all one party so things actually get done, right? Because in order for something to get done, it needs to go through like every single branch of the government. So like between the three main branches of the government, we're so divided between all of them.
Yeah.
And the internet isn't helping bring people together. All they're doing is like shouting their opinions at each other and not like forming solutions at all, which is exactly what you said earlier.
Yeah, because it's designed. The thing is, our government is supposed to be designed with checks and balances. One is always checking on the other one.
Exactly.
When the fact of the matter is, it's just nothing actually of importance is getting done because of that. Because one isn't agreeing with the other one, and it's just awful. Like, one is for climate change, one is not like for climate change. Keep things the way that they are. Like, it doesn't matter. So it's just nothing is getting accomplished, and everything's just in a deadlock.
And I think a lot of it also kind of comes down to the fact that a lot of people don't want the government to have all the power.
Yeah.
But somebody has to write rules, whether it is for federally or on the state level.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind more states to have more power to determine certain laws.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, you know, gay marriage, abortion, like these kind of things that are very particular to people that really don't have an impact on society whatsoever.
No, not at all.
And it's just kind of like a personal thing. And if states had more power in determining what they want to be legal and illegal, whether it is something like marijuana, that's a popular one that's becoming legal in a lot of states.
Yep.
Like, let them deal with it. And if you want to live in the state, great. If you don't, move. Like, who cares? Right? And that's my biggest problem is if you're in an area where you're uncomfortable, make a change.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? You go back?
Yeah. It's basically one of those things where it's just like there are more important issues that should be handled by state that are not being handled by state.
Right. And so I understand like people wanting more power in the state and also more power in the government, because in the federal government, because if the federal government makes it a law, obviously everyone's got to abide by it. But also if the federal government had more power, then people would understand that's the way it is, right?
Yeah.
And you would vote for the people who go to the federal government who feel the same way about things that you do, right? And that's pretty much like the power aspect of why you should vote, is to get these people who have the same kind of mindset that you have and points of view that you agree with, to send them and have them share what you want and kind of build it that way instead of doing it the other way where it's just like whoever has the most money, the most support, right?
The most Twitter followers.
All of this kind of stuff. The most exposure. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Biden is automatically a
Democratic candidate.
He's automatically like a front runner because his name, because he was a vice president for Obama.
Exactly.
Right?
As opposed to what he actually believes in and what we believe in.
But there's so many better candidates that I agree with on a lot more different levels that aren't going to even get to the primaries.
No,
and it's very sad.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just like democratically,
on
but
both
Republican
sides,
as well.
and Democrat.
I'm sure there's Republicans that I would agree with. There's Democrats that I agree with. Not 100%.
Yes.
But if they have the right direction and they're willing to work together, I think that's what we need. We need more team players in Washington.
Yeah,
we don't have team players.
Yeah, as opposed to where it's Republicans versus Democrats in the goddamn White House.
The two-sided parties system that we have is broken.
It's awful.
It's really, really broken.
Yeah.
The Indian elections that happened last year, maybe 2 years ago, I think there were like 14 parties on the final ballot.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yep.
Nuts.
UK has
14.
about like 8. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
United Kingdom, 8. We have 2.
We have 2.
We don't even get a third.
No.
Give us 3.
No.
Give us 3 so you can understand like
and they don't see any of their points
side.
as valid. They don't see any of like their counterpoints as valid. They
exactly. They're like, it's my way or the highway, homie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
No. Which makes no sense because they both commingle. They both exist within within like their areas of legislation. So it's like, why aren't they agreeing with each other?
And that's why I said maybe more power to the states fixes that and actually gets things moving.
So that was Pet Peeves.
Pet Peeves episode complete.
Yeah, not just Pet Peeves. We covered a lot of things today.
We went into a lot of things.
Climate control.
A lot of ranting
boomer.
happened.
Yeah.
At least from me, I ranted a lot.
Yeah, you ranted a lot this episode, but I enjoyed it.
I got some things
listening.
off my chest.
Yeah. But so next week, we're going to be taking a step back from some serious like millennial boomer stuff. We haven't talked about video games in a while, And yeah, we kind of want to talk about video games. So we're going to talk about different types of gamers.
And I kind of want to relate it to more than just video games, too. Like, what kind of games do people like? And what kind of people usually gravitate towards those games?
Yeah, the audience, yeah.
Whether it is a board game, whether it's a card game, you know? And then there's obviously video games. And there's so many different types of video games, obviously, right? So you can definitely break it down into, you know, the most popular types of games and why certain people like those games.
People who play those games.
And the types of people. And we don't want to generalize people. But I've played almost every type of game.
Yeah.
So I have experience in like dealing with the communities that are in that game.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'll be able to talk about that pretty confidently with some research to back it up. Until then, let's get that bread.
Acquire that grain.
Till this week.
Have a great week.